So I want to take a moment and bring you to a small town called Mason, Tennessee. The population is just over 1,500 people, and nearly 72% of those residents are Black. Mason just so happens to be not that far away from a planned Ford facility, which would be one of the largest investments in the state's history. But what makes this so concerning, actually, is the ultimatum the Tennessee comptroller reportedly gave leaders of the small town, a majority of whom are Black, over finance issues. The ultimatum was either give up the town's charter or this comptroller would take over the town's finances for an undetermined period of time, according to the Tennessee Lookout. The move was met with pushback from a community that's home to descendants of enslaved people. Now we're learning the comptroller has reportedly adjusted his plan and aims to give the town control over its finances again, quote, sooner rather than later. Joining me now to break this all down is Dr. Anthea Butler. She's an associate professor of Africana Studies at the University of Pennsylvania and an MSNBC columnist. Thank you so much for being here. So how did we get here? How did this town's debt accumulate over time to the point where the comptroller is like, you don't get to be in charge of your own town anymore?
Yeah, Zerlina, this is a sad case. And part of the reason why is because of the malfeasance of previous administrations in the city who actually were, white. And so that's the first thing. And so what they had was a backlog of things that they needed to pay. And the comptroller just thought that he could come in and take everything and decide that we'll just take the city's charter because this is part of the Tennessee state constitution that they can do so. I am thoroughly convinced, however, that the efforts of the people in Mason, especially the vice mayor, played a role in making this back up a little bit, because basically, had this not become public, I believe that the comptroller would have already taken over the town and would have put this whole city this whole tiny town into a really serious situation where they would not be able to get the benefits of the tax breaks and all the rest of the things that were going to happen because of Ford coming into next door to them and people being employed by them.
So let's dig into that a little bit. I mean, talk about the significance of the Ford plant being built in the nearby town and how that, as you mentioned, was a catalyst for this comptroller to basically say, like, you don't get to be in charge.
Yeah, this is definitely a money grab. The way I can see it, it's a money grab. It's a prestige grab. The Ford plant that is going to be built there is actually for electric trucks. If you remember a few months back, Joe Biden made a big show of driving around in one of these electric trucks. And this is actually where it's going to be built, one of the plants in the country. And so what is going to happen for this community is not just about employment and jobs. There's going to be tax revenues that come in. There will be businesses that come alongside this Ford plant because people are going to need to eat. They're going to need to stay there. There may be hotels. And this town is really small. I lived in Tennessee for a time. And one of the things that has always been a sort of a feature of Mason, Tennessee is the great food and restaurants that are there. They got great barbecue. There's a great fried chicken place. And people would come off of the interstate to come there. Now there's a bigger reason to come and visit Mason because of the Ford plant. And so I think the comptroller saw this as a way to gain more money that the state was already going to get, but in a sense, put people in charge that he wanted to be in charge rather than the town's elected mayor and other city council members.
It's important. I mean, I love fried chicken and the barbecue in Tennessee, Memphis specifically. So I can imagine in Mason, it's probably pretty good. In your piece for MSNBC.com, you write, quote, "What's happening in Tennessee is disturbing. The state has already been making regrettable policy decisions related to what subjects should be taught in school and how the state should address the pandemic, combined with the hostility shown to Mason, Tennessee. It's looking less like a site for a state-of-the-art manufacturing plant for Ford's electric trucks and more like a state that's just emerged from the Civil War." I mean, talk about how the treatment of Mason is actually in line with American history.
It really is. I mean, one of the things that people actually need to understand is that most of the land that was lost by African Americans was lost post Civil War and Reconstruction and what we call redemption, which was the backlash against Reconstruction. And so in small towns like Mason and other places around the South, people had land actually stolen from them because people said, oh, you didn't have this charter, you don't have the paperwork, you don't really own this land. And in some cases, they even actually went into the court records and changed things so they could change who was the owner of the land. And so one of these things that I think that Mason brings up for me is the way that people, especially African Americans, have had land stolen from them, have had cities destroyed because of racial segregation and racism and violence, and that kind of capability to make not just a home for people, but to have strong revenue and have a strong sense of business in the city. It's a whole history that we have that is a terrible history that many people in Tennessee who are against CRT and all this other stuff that they say they're against, but they're really against the teaching of Black history, that are against the teaching of this history, are trying to promulgate and also to take away the opportunities of people who are already doing this.
History, man. This whole show feels like a history lesson, but I'm telling you, if you don't know American history, what's happening right now is not really going to make any sense. So it's very important to understand all of that. Dr. Anthea Butler, thank you so much. It's great to see you. Please stay safe. Have a great weekend. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.